Ms. Crockett, I do agree with you about Tyre Nichols' death. I watched the video and it was tragic and extremely difficult to watch. I would also like to point out that that city is Democrat controlled and the 5 officers that have been arrested and charged are Black. And I think that this isn't an issue of racism or anything like that. I think that the judge and the jury and the trial needs to work out what happened there, but I share that with you. But I'd like to also point something that I'd hope you share with me. There's a woman in this room whose daughter was murdered on January 6th, Ashli Babbitt.
You might have been able to predict at this point in your political news watching career that that's where she was going to go with this. So she found it very hard to get through the Tyre Nichols video. I will extend an olive branch to her and say, sure, maybe she actually watched it. She seems to have watched it though to then make racist points out of it, because she does, of course, because she's an idiot, the bumbling version of what many other right wingers in politics are doing, which is, it looks like in this case, it's not as clear of a racial motive. She just says they were all Black. It's not racist, except that it can still very much be racist. And even if you didn't care about that part, which she doesn't care at all about any of the other sort of baked in structural parts of our law enforcement system that resulted in these killings. She's not interested in actually stopping those things. This is all just designed to get her to the true victim, who is not Tyre Nichols or the many others, including their family and friends who were killed needlessly by the cops every year. It was the woman engaging in the insurrection. Here's a little bit more on that.
I hope, Mr. Chairman, look into those civil rights abuses because they're happening in a jail right here in this city. And I hope Ms. Norton will care about that as well. As well as jails across the country. I've been in that jail, and it's not just the January 6th defendants pre-trial, by the way. It's many of the inmates in there living in horrific conditions. So I think that's something that you and I can care about.
So look, the racist point, obviously terrible. The equating Tyre Nichols being hunted down and murdered with the admittedly tragic killing of Ashli Babbitt as she was part of a mob that was attempting to storm the Capitol and possibly assassinate politicians. Insane that you would equate those things. But bear in mind, this is also, she said these remarks that you just saw in response to Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, who had proposed adding a civil rights and civil liberties subcommittee. So this is a subcommittee that has previously existed. They are not allowing that, by the way. That subcommittee's gone. The civil rights and civil liberties, no focus on that anymore. And then as insult to injury, a little bit of salt into the wound, gonna use the discussion about the destruction of that subcommittee to make racist points and talk about how white conservative insurrectionists are the true victims in our society, which I might at least be willing to tolerate if she had some sort of proposal to improve the conditions in prisons. This is a rhetorical point for her. She's brought it up many times, especially focusing on solitary confinement and the conditions there, both of those terrible things that should be fixed. She doesn't seem interested in actually doing any of the fixing. It is useful to her to deploy as a rhetorical tactic to make you feel bad for people who are trying to hang Mike Pence and probably kill AOC and stuff. But beyond that, she's not interested in actually changing anything. Jared, what do you think?
Of course not. This is the thing. You always have to ask the question when folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene go through these. What's the end point? What's your point? What are you trying to get to? Most times it's absolutely nothing. She mentioned off on the side in that first video that the city, she's talking about Memphis, where these cops killed Tyre Nichols. It's a Democrat-controlled city. Okay, why do you say that? Because the next, she's leaving it there for her supporters, people who listen to the stupid things that she says, to go, oh, that means they allow it, endorsed it, train these cops to do it, want it to happen more. Which one is it? You just allow people to think that. It's empty propaganda just looking to divide. These Democrats are the ones who are supporting cops killing citizens, Black folks in the streets. Which politicians continue to ignore this problem? Which politicians talk about how BLM and many folks who surrounded these movements and these activists in the streets during the summer of 2020, finally, when people did this, which politicians were the ones saying, get them off the streets? They're complaining about nothing. They should have just should listen to the officers. That person that was murdered has nothing to do with this. These officers need to be let off the hook. Who was saying that stuff? So if you ask her the question, why are you talking about how this is a Democrat-controlled city? Does it mean they endorse the cops? Are they back in the blue? Is it back to blue no matter who? Who are the ones who are saying this stuff? These are officers. So they try to muddy these waters with this because it's empty propaganda. It's just looking to make you hate one side or the other. And back to the main thing, vote for more Republicans to then do absolutely nothing except keep their jobs and steal more money. Number two, John, I got a lot to say. January 6th, there was tons of folks who ran up on the Capitol, majority of which were white. When they assaulted white police officers, because they like to say this about the Tyre Nichols thing, was it white on white crime? Because they definitely did that. Oh, when Ashli Babbitt was about to jump over that separator and get to white politicians, was it gonna be white on white crime? No, they won't say that stuff because that doesn't fit that narrative. One more part here. I'm sick of these videos. I didn't watch the Tyre Nichols thing. You said that maybe you gave her the benefit of the doubt that she would. Maybe she did, but I'm tired of these videos. If you think about it, I was talking to Adrienne Lawrence about this and I told her, because I think she was tired of it when she last saw one on my show. It's tiring. And the original purpose for showing these, the first one being a Rodney King back in 91 or 92, was for people to find it, and they looked up and they said, you see all of these folks who have been talking about being assaulted by cops when they're unarmed, doing nothing, being harassed and murdered like this. Finally, you see video evidence. The purpose was to try to convince racists that this stuff really happens.
Yeah.
Now that we've seen about 1,000 of these videos, do the racists seem to care that these things happen, or do they keep giving excuses why this should continue to happen? At this point, we don't need to keep showing these videos, because now it's just become entertainment for these folks who like to watch it. Just like back in the day when they used to lynch and drag black folks by the back of trucks and then have a picnic around someone being murdered. Now we're just putting it on video. I'm tired of it. Either we're gonna show it and then somehow people are convinced of the reality, or we should just stop talking about this stuff and just go to trying to change some of these reforms. Because there's nobody left to convince that these things happen. They happen over and over and over again. And all that's left is people like Marjorie Taylor Greene to spin it and say, you see how this Democrat-controlled city is doing this? It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. Sorry, I'm done.
There's I mean, you're brought on to talk. Yeah, I mean, I think there are people too convinced, they're just not convincible. Because they don't care, they're not interested. You're trying to convince people to recognize the humanity in people they don't want to see as human, which is going to be inherently difficult. Yeah, really fast. Like she thinks that she's making some sort of novel point in pointing out that simply having democratic government doesn't solve all of society's ills. I feel like at TYT we've made that point a couple of times. Feel like it. Also, by the way, I'm sure everyone watching this already understands this. But can we also point out that when she says, well, it's clearly not a racial thing because all of them were black. No, they weren't. What are you talking about? Yes, those 5 people were. I guess the chief of police is, but the initial cop that was involved in it and did the tasing and said, go chase him down and stomp him was white. One of the EMTs that showed up and decided, I don't feel like helping, I'm just gonna stand here for a bit, who was fired, was white. So it would be a dumb racist point if it was accurate. It's just also not accurate. Let's be clear about that. By the way, I just want to give you one more quote. Representative Jasmine Crockett, who we're going to be reaching out to and hopefully bring on the show to talk about this, said about the dissolution of the subcommittee. When over 100 people every year are losing their lives in routine traffic stops, when over a dozen large police departments are operating under consent decrees for violations of their citizens' civil liberties, and when the attention of a nation is focused on the issue of civil rights, it is our duty to rise to the occasion and conduct oversight and provide accountability on this crucial subject. And I agree. Look, I don't necessarily have much faith that if it existed, it would accomplish much, even if the Democrats were still in charge, let alone if at the end of the day, there's a Republican chair to that Civil Rights and Liberties Committee. I will just point out though, it is not a coincidence that they're getting rid of this, literally as the nation is focused on the barbaric killing of Tyre Nichols. I think this is all intentional. It's to send a signal to their base. We don't give a damn about this stuff. We're not only not gonna do anything to solve it, we're not even gonna acknowledge that it's a problem in Congress. We're moving on, forget about it. And also, we're gonna score some cheap racist points like Marjorie Greene in our destruction of it.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.